Good, we're good.
Hello, 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 and welcome back to The 12. This is a show about the Women's Super League, aka the highest division of women's football in England. We're here to discuss all things WSL, both on and off the field. Each week, we'll be breaking down games, showcasing stars, and highlighting important stories surrounding the game. My name is Deepti, and I'm here with my co hosts today, Marc and Treb. Tom Baum unfortunately couldn't be with us today. And this week, it's about poetry. Imagine you're in a coffee shop, put on my best um, poet face and mind. And North London is red, Merseyside is blue, but the two undefeated teams left are Chelsea and Man U. But we're not even going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about
You gotta
the
give the snap.
relegation battle. Thank you for the snaps. Thank you for the snaps. Those are all the top of the table teams. We're talking about the relegation battle first. Because honestly, that part, like title race is exciting, but to me, I think the relegation battle is even more exciting this time around. Yeah, I guess. Okay, Treb, I'm gonna hand it over to you, and you can get us going on what the table looks like right now and
Yeah,
who you would consider as part of like in the battle.
right. So I think the last couple of weeks we've talked about what teams look like and finding that separation and kind of determining where teams stand. And I feel like for the first time all season, we have a bit of an idea. You look at the table, the top five teams: Chelsea, City, Brighton at third, Arsenal at fourth, and Man United at fifth. I feel like that's the cutoff. Manchester United at 15 points. I think the next team below them is Liverpool with 9 points, which is only 6 points back. But I think more importantly than the points, it's the form with all the teams that I feel like are in the relegation battle. You look at Liverpool, Tottenham, Aston Villa, Everton, Leicester City, West Ham, and Palace. I think you can look at all of those teams and say, yeah, if they go on another kind of run of losing matches, they could absolutely find themselves at the bottom of the table and absolutely find themselves losing ground. And I think with all of those teams, it's possible with how they played. I mean, you look at Liverpool, their run so far, they've lost 3 of the last 5. So, and they look like they're kind of starting to slide even further down. You look at Tottenham, they started off well and they started to lose matches. And then of course you have the usual suspects that have been there all year with Palace and Everton and West Ham and Villa, and it just takes a run from one or two of those teams, and then you're looking at, possibly a big club being in real danger of not being in the WSL next year. And I think that makes it, I don't know if I would call it exciting. I think it makes it more intriguing because I don't know if I'm excited to see a team leave the WSL. I know that that's part of it, but it is intriguing because, like I said, this could be a season where it could be a team like Everton. It could be a team like West Ham. If Liverpool ends up on the wrong side of a run, they could be fighting for their league lives. So it's getting to an interesting point, especially when you consider we're just a month and a half away from that winter window opening and kind of teams really getting into the mix in terms of transfers and such.
Who I guess is the biggest surprise to you right now, for both of you, at what position they are in the table currently after 8 matches?
I think Tottenham are my surprise just because they have the more, I would say, complete team of the bunch. Because like Liverpool, I think we expected them to be better than they had been historically, but I'm not necessarily surprised that they're a mid-table team because it takes a lot, especially in the WSL where you have, like I mentioned, the top 5 teams. Like it's such a strong list that you have to overcome to kind of get out of that mid-table position. But I think with Tottenham, they look like the team that truly a lot of us felt like would take that next step. And not only have they not taken the next step, they've started to regress. And they're a team that I worry about a lot because I think just given who they are historically as an organization and as a club, I think it's a dangerous position for them to be in, kind of losing matches, losing confidence, and sliding back into what is going to be a very tough relegation battle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would. I'd probably say those two teams as well. I probably would say Liverpool as well, and not so much the position, but it's the fact that they're 4 points out of a relegation spot, and like if you consider Aston Villa and Everton on 6 points to be in the race, well, Liverpool are 3 points out of the race, and so it's like you said, a bad run of form could see them slide down, and you think about the points that. You think about some of the results that they've had this season. Obviously, the one over the weekend, we'll get into it. A little bit unfortunate there. They lost last minute to Man City. Could they have gotten a point out of that? Right. And so, it's just those points right now seems like they would have been really useful. And it's just one of those things where, or have they been unlucky, or will this keep happening? Because I just think there's a lot of season left. I think teams like Crystal Palace and West Ham have, I think they're largely deserving of their positions as the bottom two teams, but I also don't think that they've been totally bad, right? Like I think it's been more on the fine margins, but if those things start to turn around, like the relegation race get really chaotic, and I absolutely worry about somebody like Tottenham who just keep letting in goals for fun. I think over the weekend was the 5th time they've allowed at least 3 goals this season, which it's the most in the league, right? It's more than Palace, more than West Ham. I think as of now they've allowed 1 more goal than Palace, and Palace let in 7 in 1 game. So like that kind of
always
form.
important context that like Palace let in
Yeah.
a huge chunk of their goals in a single match against a
I
team
will
like
say-
Chelsea. So it's like fair play.
Yeah. Well, we always say Palace let in 7 against Chelsea. Palace also let in 4 in their first match against Tottenham. So Tottenham has the +4 over Palace through that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so if you like
That
even
looks even
consider
worse,
that,
yeah.
it looks even worse that if you disregard that match and look at the number of goals allowed and scored by both teams. Oh, allowed. I won't say about Crystal Palace scoring, but yeah, then it's even worse.
Yeah.
Because you basically, -4 the goal difference for Tottenham.
And they've allowed goals, like they allowed 2 to Aston Villa. I think Aston Villa had 6 goals going into the weekend. They allowed 1 to West Ham. I think West Ham had 4 goals going into the weekend. So it's like they're just finding ways to allow goals, and those are the type of things that could come back to haunt you in a race that's so tight. I think the saving grace is that the only one team goes down, but right now it could be any of these teams, any of those bottom 6, maybe 7, including Liverpool.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Crystal Palace, they're like in 12th, but on 5 points, and 1 win, barring whatever happens in the other matches, will bump them up to 7th from 12th. Like that's how close it is right now. So yeah, I know Treb, you said it's not maybe exciting for you, it's more intriguing, but to me it's exciting because when it gets closer, like we're a third of the way through.
It's still early, yeah.
But as it gets closer and closer to where you might start to even separate a little more, or like teams will get a sense that okay, it's like actually crunch time, like we actually can be relegated. I think then they'll start, the mentality shifts a little bit, and they're like, okay, these are like must win or must score
matches,
points.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's when it gets even more fun.
And I will say too, like we spoke very highly of Tottenham and Liverpool, and so I think if they find themselves in a relegation race post Christmas, I think that's already like you're not hitting your goals, right? Like this isn't the type of season you thought you were going to have. So, it's already kind of a disappointment, but then, it's like you were saying, you kind of have to shift the mentality and say, okay, we're fully in this race now. We need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps.
Tottenham especially, they were hoping for 3rd. They were hoping to take over Arsenal. And with the bad, and again, you look at the table with the bad start Arsenal had to still kind of be in their, regular spot. and Tottenham facing relegation battle, like that's, I'm sure Arsenal fans are happy about it, but just an objective point of view, like that's not good. Like Marc said, like that's not good to be in that position heading into Christmas.
Mhm.
Yeah. I want to say my surprise, actually, I'd probably go with Aston Villa, just because it took them until this
Fairs,
weekend to get their
fairs.
first win of the season, which we'll talk about their game more later. But yeah, they last season, I can't remember if it was last season before, but they've had roller coaster seasons where either they've started really hot and then dropped off, or like not started hot at all and then they had like a win streak, or like at least got a bunch of points middle or end of the season. So now, like, is this a turning point for them, do you think? um I'm just like throwing out thoughts right now, but maybe after not winning their first seven, finally getting a win can spark something. um Granted, it was against Crystal Palace, but yeah, we'll see if this can turn something around. But I just want to reiterate what you said, Treb. Like, it's important that a lot of these teams are going to be playing the people around them, playing the teams around them,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when it's kind of make or break.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that. I'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about Palace, but yeah, definitely crucial.
Okay, let's jump right into the game recaps. Started with a doozy, Brighton versus West Ham, a 5-goal thriller. Honestly, this game was like, it was end to end. It was nonstop, and highly recommend watching the highlights, at least, if not the match, because it was really exciting. 3 goal scorers for Brighton. Brighton won 3-2 over West Ham. Rachel McLaughlin, Kiko Seke, and Fran Kirby. And each of them scored, obviously, but then each of them also assisted. So they each either like assisted one of the other goal scorers, which is fun. And the first goal, Fran Kirby's assist, was this wicked like back heel flick, and it was so cool. And then McLaughlin's like curve around the defenders, curled the ball, and it just like reached the bottom corner and just went past the goalkeeper in like a perfect position. So that one, I think that was my favorite goal of the match. They tried the back heel thing again, but this time I don't know who was trying to assist, but someone was trying to give it to Kirby this time, and then she almost did the exact same curl and tried to curl it around, but it just went like wide of the post. So that happened a couple more times throughout the game, which was fun, because that is like, I don't know if there's something you work on in training, if that's like a specific play, but they're like thrown in some tricks there. But the match was, first half was 1-0. That was the McLaughlin goal. Second half is when it got more interesting. 60th minute is when Kiko Seki scored to make it 2-0. But then in the 64th and 69th, Katrina Gorey scored 2, honestly, bangers, both from quite far out. The first one was outside the box, and I think the second one was just inside the box. First one, no one saw her like even trying to shoot. She just kind of went for it, went in, and it was great. I think I'm trying to find her expected goals, but either way, both of them, her expected goals, it looks like, was less than 1, and she scored 2, which is amazing. But the second goal came 5 minutes after her first, and it came from Brighton trying to play out the back and just completely messing it up. And if you listen to our last episode, we said multiple times, do not play out the back. Just don't. Bad things happen when you do.
The worst thing you can do. Just don't. Even teams that think they're good at it, they're not.
Yeah. It's like you can be really confident and think you're good at it, and then one thing goes wrong, and then no. But then 82nd minute, Super Fran to the rescue. She scored the winner. Pretty good goal as well. Just this one, like I said, it was really fun. Lots of shots. Each team had 12 total shots, 7 on target for Brighton and 5 on target for West Ham. So it was action on both sides of the pitch, and just really good. And I think even though they lost, West Ham, this was like kind of a spark for them. You know, they won last weekend, and I think we saw that carry over into this match. And it was honestly looking like it could have been a really good draw up until those last like 10 minutes. But I think it'll be disappointing for them, but it's not like, obviously it's not the worst performance. I think they actually did play pretty decently.
The build up for the winner that scored by Frank Kirby was really nice as well. Brighton posted a real slow mo. I forgot what the song was, but it was kind of like a not like classical music, but like a slow song, right? Kind of like a ballad. As a
Was it the
background music.
Enya song?
Was it? I don't.
That
it might have
classic
been.
Enya song that.
Yeah. It was something along those lines. Yeah. But it was that was really nice play. And like I don't know, Brighton. I mean, Brighton's been fun this season, so yeah, just honestly, just a good WSL match between two teams that not necessarily fighting for the title or anything, but still, it's like highlights the quality that is in this league.
Yeah, and it like showcased the also two Japanese players. I know we had mentioned a lot of the Japanese players last episode, but Kiko Seki on Brighton, and then Riko Ueki on West Ham, who also had a good match, had a couple shots. They're both, again, showcasing like how strong Japan is and how the young players are doing there. Yeah. Next up, we had the North London derby at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but Arsenal came out with the 3-0 win. That makes it 12-0 in the last 3 matches.
Man.
What is this team?
Yeah. I mean, that's what, 15-1 over the last 5 matches, and their only goal being the 1-1 draw against United, which going back to that, it doesn't feel as bad now. Right. Because they've since just been a buzzsaw running through everybody. They can't seem to be stopped. Alicia Russo finding phenomenal form. She scored in this match in the first 2 minutes of the match, just immediately on their necks. And then, followed up by, I think it was Manu had the second goal. So, I mean, it was just another classy, dominant performance from Arsenal. I think there was some nerviness a little bit after the Russo goal. Tottenham seemed to kind of get going a little bit more, started putting on the pressure a little bit, but Arsenal was able to keep it under control. Like I said, get that second goal, eventually find a third. They probably could have had a fourth a couple of times, but I mean, yeah, it just like you said, Deepti, what is this team? I don't even know who we are anymore. I mean, it's so great to watch them now, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. Just the job Renee's doing and kind of how she is making it almost impossible to replace her, right? Because not only is she winning, but she's winning with style. They're winning consistently. They're putting in a lot of goals. They're defending well. I think we're starting to reach the point where we can't really say it's the new manager bump, I think we're past that. I think we're almost past that. And just like I said, just based off what I've seen, it looks like with every game, we're starting to get more and more of her style of play in terms of like what she wants from players, the minutes that they get. We saw it against Tottenham. Rosa Kofaji came in, I think, at the 50-something minute mark. So like she came in a lot earlier than I think she ever had. So we're seeing the subs a lot earlier. So I think she's starting to feel comfortable in that role, and I don't know what's being said behind the scenes, but I think that I wouldn't be mad at Arsenal taking their time with the manager search. I think it's an important job. Obviously, you don't want another Jonas. You want somebody that's going to instill confidence in the team, bring in big players, bring in top talent, and kind of bring us back to the standard that we're used to. So far, Renee has done that. So I don't have any problem with them taking their time and finding a permanent replacement, if that's the route they want to go by. So, but like I said, we'll talk about that later. But just the match itself, loved it. I mean, win against a rival. They're in the mud. Yeah. Life is good.
It's good. And I want to reiterate again what you said about the subs. I think you're right. Like, I thought this match, Renee used the subs properly. before, like you said, maybe she's also trying to like input her style a little bit more and try to figure out, maybe she was experimenting. But this one, like there was Kim Little was subbed off at halftime. You typically don't see like the subs that early. But there's that, and then Russo and Ford got subbed off in the 64th minute, which is also quite early. Like I know we are saying Russo was kind of, she usually doesn't play a full 90, but then she did play a full 90 and then also started. And then now coming off after 60 minutes, like it's a good mix. And I think it's a good way to rest players, but also get them enough time and just kind of keep the opponents on their toes of like who's coming in when. Blackstenius was great off the bench. Like she scored 2 minutes after she came on.
Yeah.
Really good. Yeah, it was fun because again, they just showed what they've been showing in the last few matches, like keep shooting, keep trying to score, don't lay off. And it's good. Like Freedom Autumn has scored, I think, the last 3 games now.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's on a tear. And 3 of the last 4 since the international break when she scored like 5 or something. So that's just carrying over. Yeah. But let us talk about Tottenham a little bit. Marc, I don't know how much of this game you watched, but what do you see from Tottenham, and like I guess is there hope for them turning the season around? Like is this, they showed some sparks, but what are your thoughts, I guess?
Yeah, in terms of a turnaround, I mean, like my reflexive answer to that is maybe they need something in January, like a significant January signing. I was listening to, I don't know if you guys ever listened to the Gold Diggers UK podcast. And for those of you listening to this podcast, I definitely recommend that podcast. They cover men's and women's football. But I was listening to one of the co-hosts, Lauren, who's a Spurs fan, and she was talking about like the sort of what the players being played in certain positions. Like they had a center back playing as the number 6. It seems like the number 6 has been like a sort of problem area for them. I don't watch Tottenham closely enough to say, they need this player, they need to address that position. But what really stood out to me in this game, and I think previous games as well, I just don't know what their plan is, especially without the ball. Like they sit off, or they'll get close to players but not really engage. They don't actually press. There doesn't seem to be an obvious point to where they stop the ball. Like it's just too easy, It's just, they're just too easy to play through. They're just too easy to dribble through. It almost looks like they kind of lack leadership on the field. And so, maybe that's where I can understand, maybe they need like a 6 or center back or something. But I feel like the manager has to take some heat as well. Like I don't really know what I'm supposed to be watching, especially when Spurs go up against good teams. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, and that's the thing. It's like, when you're Spurs, you can only flat track bully so many teams in this league, right? Like, I mean, I think their position in the table is deserved, right? I don't think they've been better. Well, they literally lost to Liverpool in kind of unlucky fashion, but they're certainly not better than Man U, Arsenal, Brighton, City, Chelsea, right? But they also, and which is fine. I mean, like that's not Brighton, but like that's not really the worst thing. The worst thing for me is they get blown away by those teams. That shouldn't happen. You're allowing a goal in the first minute against City, in the second minute against Arsenal at home, and that was the other thing too. No, Deepti, did you go to this match or no?
No, I wasn't able to.
Okay, because I gotta say, like in the highlights and what I watched. Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry.
He's like, let me confirm this.
No, I was gonna call for my cousin. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So from what I could tell on TV, the Arsenal fans were loud, right?
Oh yeah.
And I was a little surprised.
Though, like that's
No, I know, so I was a little surprised that Tottenham actually hosted this at the big stadium, especially on this weekend when they did this initiative. Like, obviously, it's a great initiative, right? But my thing is, like, there's no way Arsenal fans are not gonna pack out that
Yeah,
stadium.
probably use a different match than the North London Derby if you want to be the home team. I
That's
see
what
what
I'm
you're
saying.
saying. Yeah, I
Because
see
it's
what you're
like
saying. Yeah.
you can't reasonably expect a good result with the team that you have out there either, right? Like
I
just
will.
Tottenham.
No, go ahead. No, go
Sorry.
ahead. Finish that.
No, I just don't think Tottenham really like put in the work to say, okay, let's make this big event. Because going back to Lauren from Gold Diggers, like she was saying, the Tottenham, like I guess the club did a lot of marketing around this match, like pop-ups and local things and so forth, and all towards an inevitable result. Like I don't know, it just like you were saying earlier, like what is the direction of this club?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I will say, like, at the risk of sounding completely full of myself as an Arsenal fan, like I just feel like on a weekend when you have this initiative to also not have a team like Arsenal, who's kind of, I mean, not kind of, they've absolutely led, the initiative overall of getting the women's side into the big stadium. I mean, they're the first team that really has their women's side playing pretty much, I mean, all but what, one or two home matches on schedule at the Emirates. So like they absolutely share that stadium at this point. And so I just feel like them not being at home was also a missed opportunity to not be like, hey, this is the team that kind of is at the forefront of this initiative that we have. Because and Marc's right, like you put Tottenham in a really bad position because there's no way that they were going to outdraw Arsenal when their home is literally a block and a half away. You know what I mean? Like you just weren't going to do that unless you kind of artificially did that. If you know what I mean, like with ticket sales and things like that, like you were never going to do that. And so I think Marc's right. It kind of put Tottenham in a rough spot on a weekend that was billed as like this massive weekend for the WSL.
Yeah, I was looking at attendance numbers. It says there were 28,852 total fans. Obviously, I don't have the breakdown of how many away versus how many Tottenham, but I will say the Arsenal fans travel extremely well. And not that this was much travel, it was just going a little bit farther north, but um, no matter where, like that away section is going to be packed and it's going to be loud no matter how many people. So like it might sound honestly like there were more Arsenal fans than there were, but I'm sure because it was also like obviously a local derby, like there were going to be a ton of fans. And yeah, unfortunately I could not make it, but I wish I did. Honestly, I more wanted to go to hear the like tube announcements that we talked about, but I
Oh
wasn't
yeah,
able
that's
to do
right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, what was I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. Okay, let's go on to the next. The top of the table clash, Chelsea versus Man City. Chelsea won 2-0, and now they've gone 2 points clear of City with a game in hand. Yeah, I guess Chelsea has obviously been is still unbeaten. They kind of look unbeatable. Is anybody going to beat Chelsea this season?
I think we got to start asking. I mean, like Chelsea had 3 losses last year at Arsenal, at Liverpool, home to City, and they just won. They just come out victorious in those 3 fixtures already. And so, like Bon Pastor, like I think she's she's already laying her marker, which is like it's big shoes to fill, and she's doing the job so far. This match, like this was a 3-hour journey starting with when the lineup came out, right? I fully expected Buchanan to be there. Obviously, we now know why. But yeah, like at the time, that was actually a bit of a shock that Buchanan wasn't starting, and so it's not going to be Bjorn, which I had questions about and so forth. And going in, it kind of felt like both managers would be okay with the point, but I was curious to see how how Bonpastor was going to set up for this match, because it's I think I kind of mentioned in the last episode, like I didn't feel like Chelsea had a signature win right? And part of that's because there's very few teams in Europe that can really go toe to toe with Chelsea in terms of like the squad, right? So I feel like most of these matches, it's been like they've played decently, and then you've had like a Myra Ramirez, a Canarid, a Gul Wright, and somebody step up and be a match winner, right? And like most of these teams just kind of get overwhelmed eventually. But I thought so. In this match, they had the possession stats were 67% Man City to 33% Chelsea, and it was pretty consistent first half and second half. And I was very like from minute one, I think it was the way they were going to set up. I think was very deliberate. I think they were happy to obviously they were happy to concede possession. They kind of set up in a 4-4-2 mid block, and it kind of gave me like shades of early Mourinho. Like when people think of Mourinho, they think of like, team sitting deep, sitting back. But his early teams, I would say like his first Chelsea team, his Inter team, it was more like mid blocks, right? Where staying compact was the key thing more than anything else. And then, winning the ball back, being very direct with it and so forth. And one of the things I was curious about was to see when Chelsea would press. I think that's something that's been interesting for me watching this Chelsea this season, kind of seeing, depending on the opponent, like how aggressively they press, when they press, and so forth. And for me, it became clear very early on that they were going to press Alana Kennedy. Like as soon as she got the ball, Hamano would blitzer. It looked like the first couple times she would like check her shoulder, make sure like everyone was where they're supposed to be, and then to go after her. And actually, she won the ball off of her foot early on in the match. And I think that got into Kennedy's head a little bit because as the match went on, Kennedy stopped coming upfield and really was just putting her foot on the ball like deep in the field and in a really non-dangerous area. And for all the possession, it's interesting because City had about twice as much of the ball as Chelsea, but Chelsea took about twice as many shots, right? 15-8. And so I think when you like think about what you saw happen was City would have a lot of possession, particularly the back line. I think Alana Kennedy had like the most touches and the most passes in this game. And they would, slowly work the ball up, work upfield and so forth, and then, not be able to get the ball, maybe turn the ball over in a certain area, and Chelsea would counterattack. And I to be fair, I thought the City backline did pretty well for the first 70 minutes in terms of covering their lines, covering their spaces. Canarid, I thought, had an interesting game. So Guru Wright and Canarid, normally play on the wing. In this 4-4-2, they were kind of sitting deep and tucked in. And I think they helped out a lot defensively, and they were like kind of taking up like counterattacking positions. I thought Canarid like had a couple of moments. She almost had an early assist to Guru, if not for the covering of I think Kasparai was the one who had it covered. But even though Canarid didn't have a goal contribution, I thought she worked really hard on both sides of the ball, and I thought she was like a pressure. She was able to release the pressure. She was an outlet for the team. I was also another thing that was interesting to me is how much they were fouling Bunny. I think she got fouled 4 times, but they were physical with her in general. The first person to foul her, actually, ironically, was Myra. So striker on striker violence. But they were determined to not let her have a free run. But Bunny had a chance, and I think that's where City were maybe a little bit unlucky because, City, Chelsea attempted to play out of the back, Sandy Baltimore. It looked like she had a more simple pass in front of her, but opted to try to play it back and just ends up playing a through ball to Bunny, basically. And, I just wonder if like the fouling and, the aggressive play kind of threw her off her game a bit because she really didn't have her best game. She missed that chance. There was another giveaway, I think by Hamano, that led to her misplacing a pass. It just, she had a couple headers. They weren't necessarily like free headers, but she still got to the ball. It just wasn't her best game. Were you gonna say something, Deepti?
I was just gonna be like, Bunny getting fouled, like shocker.
Right. I know how they like. I know how
day.
City fans feel too, because you see it happen to Myra or Sam Kerr. But it's also like, yeah, we're gonna do that though. And actually, there were only 2 yellow cards this entire match. So Natalie Bjorn picked up a yellow card at the end of the first half. Bunny looked like she was gonna have a run, maybe at a chance right at the end of the half, and Bjorn just pulled it back and was like, nope, go ahead and take that yellow. Which I actually thought was a really good play. But yeah, second half, like I think you saw much of the same. Chelsea took more shots in the second half. I think they looked more dangerous. I thought Hamano was unlucky a couple times, including early in that second half where Myra took the ball down the left channel and attracted both defenders, and Hamano was wide open. And if she had seen that pass, they might have had a goal earlier. But yeah, I think the goal largely was a product of everything I kind of just talked about, right? So Kasparai, I thought Kasparai was one of City's, she's City's right back for those of you listening. And I thought she was one of City's more dangerous players, especially since Fujino and Mary Fowler weren't doing anything. Like towards the end of the half, the commentator, I think it's Jonathan Pierce, was talking about maybe they need to put Mary Fowler on the other side of the field or something to free her up. And I was like, oh, right, she's in this game. But
yikes,
yeah, Fowler actually had the fewest touches of any City player. So, as complimentary as I am of her, she didn't do much in this match. And I think that's also a compliment to Lucy Bronze, who had a very good match. But yeah, going back to the goal. So Kasparai brings the ball down the right side. City as a team really committed forward. And Kasparai kind of plays like a nothing ball into the box. It was weird, but Millie Bright plays it out. And Hamano looks like she's going to run into it, but Canarid is there, given her position of sitting so deep. And she plays it over to Guro Wrighton, who's also tucked in and sitting deep. And they kind of do that little triangle, which springs Hamano, allows her to play the ball into Myra. But even at that point, it's still 2v1. Like, if you're City, like, you would still take that normally, except Alana Kennedy gets dusted, right? Like, I watched her to see if she would complain. She didn't even complain. She was just like, oh, no.
She did.
Like, yeah. And then Greenwood, who picked up a yellow card at the beginning of the second half, she's one-on-one with Myra. She's backing off, and it's like, Myra's just so good, man. Like, she's big, she's strong, she's fast, she has the skill. Like, I think we're going to have to start talking about Myra as, like, among the best strikers in the league and maybe the world. It's really, it's super impressive. Like, I mentioned the shades of Mourinho earlier. This match, Myra Ramirez in this match gave me shades of Drogba. Like, it's just sort of unplayable, But I thought in this match in particular, so she had the fewest touches of any Chelsea player. And, obviously, as we saw, she was very clinical, took that goal very well. And what I loved about after the little period after that was Chelsea stayed on their necks. And this is something I've noticed earlier in the season. It's like they score one goal, the second one comes pretty quickly, right? It's like they're thirsty. Like when they feel like they have the momentum, they're thirsty for that second goal, maybe third goal, and so forth. And you saw it. You saw off a corner. I think they've been very good on set pieces so far this season. Recycled possession. At that point, the defense is just scrambling, right? It's not really. There's no real structure at that point, and that's how Guro Wrighton, who took the corner, was left wide open. I think also some fatigue setting in at that point. They've been working hard all match. And Guro's Guro. And I think Guro deserves a shout as well. We talk a lot about Myra. We talk a lot about Canarid. But Guro's one of the first names on the team sheet for a reason. She's just ever present. She's one of the most consistent players in WSL. And so I was happy for her to get that goal, in addition to everything else she did in this match. So, So, Gareth Taylor. After the match, Gareth Taylor says around the 70th minute, he was thinking that this was heading towards a stalemate, right? Like a 0-0. And I'll be honest, like around that time, I was kind of like, is anybody going to make subs? Right? Because Bon Pastor did not make a sub until the 83rd minute, and she's normally been proactive, but it's that thing that I've noticed a lot of managers, particularly in England, say things like they don't want to make a sub or they don't want to introduce a player into a certain match because they don't know how quickly they can get them up to speed, the intensity of the match and so forth. And so they end up being conservative with subs, even though they have 5. But so Gareth Taylor said that around the 70th minute, he thought it was heading towards a stalemate. And after the goal score, he brings on Chloe Kelly and Laura Coombs. But it's just like, I just don't understand it at that point. Like, you could have did that 5-10 minutes earlier when the match is in the balance. And it's just that reactive managing. Like, I think this is why City haven't been successful. So, yeah.
I'm glad you brought that
shows
up.
Mentality too, though, right? Like, I feel like that's if you're sitting there thinking, okay, this feels like it's going to be a draw, and you're not even attempting to bring on Kelly before that to get the win, and you're only doing it after you've now conceded a goal, like that's poor mentality. Like, if you're sitting there saying, okay, there's points to be had in this match, it's kind of a stalemate, like, let me bring in somebody now and change the match to try to get this win because I know I'm going to need it if I want to lift this title. Like, you're going to have to beat Chelsea. You're going to have to. Yeah. And, to be thinking that and then go down a goal and then be like, oh, yeah, I'm bringing someone in now. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the subs thing because, like you said, Chloe Kelly was the first sub in the 80th minute. And then Coombs right after. Ashley Lawrence in the 83rd for Chelsea. And then Aggie Beever-Jones in the 90th minute. Do you think it's like 2 things, I guess? One, about what you said of getting players up to speed, like especially in such a tense match, and you don't want there to be any like delays when they come on and possibly a mistake for not already being warmed up and in it. Or 2, like we know that both teams are going through a Champions League spell right now, and so those games too, they just want to rest legs. Like, do you think it's a little bit of both, or it was just poor management this time, maybe on both sides, of not using more than just the 2 subs in the last 10 minutes?
Yeah, I'm obviously you're letting the result dictate a little bit how you feel about the process, right? So I'm obviously gonna be a little more sympathetic towards Bon Pastor because she came out victorious, right? What I will say too, though, like, I talked a lot before about Bon Pastor being proactive with the squad, with the subs. So even the Celtic match midweek, Baltimore, she made 3 halftime subs. I forget which players those were. I know Baltimore is one of them, and I know Canarid was one of the players that came in. And so, like, basically, like, players who were that she knew she was going to use on the weekend didn't play a full match versus Celtic, right? So I think Hamano might have been one of those players and so forth. But I think that I looked at it as her maybe preparing for a moment like this. In other words, like, there are going to be where basically she knows that there are going to be matches where she's not going to use as many subs, and I mean, like, you could argue too, like I mentioned the stats before with the amount of shots, and the general state of play. Maybe she saw enough where she said the breakthrough is coming, right? Where maybe she was just like, you know what? I knew this was going to be a match like this. I'm not worried yet. I'm going to let a little more time pass before I consider it. Because, like, I think in a 0-0 match, like, I could see subs happening between the 75th and 80th minute, right? Especially if you're accounting for injury time. But, yeah, I mean, Myra scores in the 75th. And then, like, after that, like, the way I thought those 5-10 minutes after the first goal, I thought was when Chelsea looked most dangerous, most like just on top of City. And so at that point, you certainly aren't going to make a sub then. So yeah, like I said, I would be a little more sympathetic towards Bon Pastor, but also looking at it from City's perspective, like Chelsea have by far scored the most goals so far in the league. Like, which you almost have to assume that a goal is coming, right? And so if you want something out of this match, you should be thinking, I need a goal.
Yeah, true. But speaking, of that, I want to point out two things. One, you mentioned Guro Reiten, and I think she is maybe underrated almost, and I think she is such an important part to Chelsea's offense. That you could see last season she had a spell where she was out for a while with a injury. I think it was ankle. And you could tell that they were missing her presence. And now, like, when she's healthy and when she's good, she's really, really important. Similarly, City was missing a big player in Lauren Hemp.
Yes.
And I think we were talking about, you said, like, Fowler kind of was missing this game. Like, she wasn't there. Typically, I feel like Hemp is probably the most, like, creative producer and like kind of chance creator on City, and so it's clear that she was missing from this game and that they were missing her. Fujino's young, so she maybe doesn't have that kind of IQ yet to do make those chances. There's Jill Roy, there's Jess Park, who often are involved a lot as well, but they were a bit quiet this time also. Does City have a replacement for Hemp? We found out that she's had a surgery recently, and so she'll be out for a bit. So, like, do they have one? Do they need to find one? What can they do to account for that?
Well, I think that's Chloe Kelly's music, right?
I was about to say there you go, right there.
That's what it sounds like. Now you gotta
start being nice to the person you've alienated.
Yeah, or waited until after 2 goals scored to bring in. I'm glad you brought up Lauren Hemp. I totally forgot about mentioning Lauren Hemp. But she also, I've read too that she's key to like recovering the ball. So she could have maybe helped City win the midfield battle in that regard. Because that was another thing in this match too. Like Hamano did such a good job on Hasegawa. Like she just wasn't able to operate the way she normally does. And I think Nushkin and Cuthbert, I thought both of them had really good games, but Cuthbert in particular in the second half looked like she might come up with a goal contribution herself. So yeah, I just thought it was actually a really intriguing tactical battle, and like I don't think City were bad, but I just kind of felt like Chelsea outlasted them due to a combination of stronger squad, slightly fresher players. I feel like City's main players like Bunny have played a bit more this season in all competitions. So this was the signature win I was looking for.
Well, congrats.
I don't think you need that.
I'll leave it at that. Okay. Well, okay. Next, we had Aston Villa versus Crystal Palace. Another 5-goal thriller. This time going in Aston Villa's favor. Aston Villa won 3-2. Treb, start us off. What did you see this match? How did it play out?
Oof. I mean, more heartbreak for Crystal Palace, right? I feel like that's kind of the theme, which isn't necessarily too surprising for a club fresh into the WSL, but just the way that they've lost matches has been painful. This one, much of the same, where Villa did have a couple of chances early, but kind of how they've looked all season, they just didn't finish any of their chances. We saw Crystal Palace also get a lot of good chances early before finally getting the breakthrough goal. It was Mikado with the first goal of the match in the 30th minute. It was a beautiful pass too, just as defenders are closing in on the player, just beautiful pass to Mikado, finishing for the goal, taking the lead. The bliss lasted about 10 minutes before Aston Villa equalized on an Anna Patton effort, which I want to see that goal from different angles. Hopefully we talk about those investment dollars. Hopefully that's going to like different camera angles, because it was one of those goals where Giannis looked like she had closed off like 98% of that near post. It looked like she was in the right position, but I don't know if someone got in her way, if maybe a Palace defender kind of obscured the ball a little bit. But it was just one of those goals where Patton just put her laces through it. It went into like the slightest sliver of space that was left for the goal, and Giannis just reacted too late to it, equalized, and then Rachel Daly, as the half was coming to an end, she got on a run, got on the end of a good pass, had enough room to get a shot off, and finished it as she tends to do. And from there, it just kind of felt like Palace were chasing the game the whole match. It just kind of felt like Villa were happy to take the result. Obviously, they had the 2-1 lead. They were at home. They looked like they wanted their first win. They were like, we're not going to do anything to mess this up. But credit to Palace. They kept fighting, kept knocking. And Annabelle Blanchard was able to get in and score what looked like to be the goal that they would snag a point off of. Honestly, it looked like, okay, they got a late goal. Maybe there was enough time for them to like sneak a winner in. Unfortunately, there was a winner. It just wasn't for Palace. It was for Villa. Ebony Salmon, in what was literally the last action of the match, got on the, just got a good pass, turn, and shot. I mean, it was just fluid motion, just pass, turn, shoot, like you work on in training. Upper 90, just nothing Giannis could do with that. I'm not even mad at her for that one. Like, just nothing a goalkeeper can do. Just right in that top shelf, upper 90 corner, just perfect for Salmon. And that was the win. And, like I said, just heartbreak for Palace. It felt like this stretch, we talked about it earlier. This was a stretch where they were playing teams around them. And I thought that 7 points was possible. I thought 7 points was probably the goal. And they will be lucky to get 3 at this rate. I mean, they've now, well, I think they already have 1, right? I don't want to make it sound too terrible.
Yeah, they have 1 draw.
Yeah, they drew against Everton, and then the loss to Villa. So they have 1 point. Hopefully they can get 4. It won't be terrible, but that loss puts them dead last in the league now. And they are officially, they were able so far to kind of stay above the fray of that relegation battle, but they are firmly in the shit now. So, I mean, I personally feel bad. Everyone knows how I feel about Palace this season. I think they're a team that, I think what's so frustrating, we talked about it last week, Deepti, you mentioned the manager mentioning that, she's asking a team that has been in the league for 7 matches to finish like a team that's been in the league for 7 years. But I think that as an outsider, that's what's frustrating about watching them, where they very much look like a team most times that belong in the WSL. I think when you look at West Ham play, when you look at Villa, how they've played at times this season, Everton especially, like I look at those teams and I can say, okay, I can see you getting relegated. I can see you out of this league. Like, you don't look like a team deserving to be in the WSL. But I look at Palace and I'm like, that's a team that is going places. And I would just hate for them to be relegated after a year and stifle what I think could be some really good growth for that club. And just the last thing I'll say, again, for Palace fans, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys have been watching them longer than I have. But just as someone who's watched them closely this season, I think the best thing they can do is get a striker in. Just, it doesn't have to be a superstar. Doesn't have to be a big name. Like, the difference in this match was a Rachel Daly and Ebony Salmon. Just a player that can create nothing or create something out of nothing, that can create their own shot, get a goal, kind of lift their team up. I think the best thing Palace can do is move Blanchard to the 10 role. I love how she creates space. I love her ability to pass. Her vision is tremendous. Her ability to draw defenders in is really good. Her finishing leaves a lot to be desired, and it's not consistent. And I just feel like for their best success, her at the 10 and just bringing in a striker like a 9, maybe even a winger that can cut inside, just bringing in an attacking option for Blanchard to feed to, I think that will help them immensely. And I think that would be the best thing they can do this January.
Well, I was just about to put you on the spot and be like, do you
Oh,
have a player in mind that they could bring in?
I think this is where it's hard, right? Because January moves are always so hard. I think this is where you look at the NWSL
Hmm.
legitimately. And I think you look at a striker. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, but you look at someone. I mean, yeah, I would have to take some time to look because, like, I mean, I don't know who would be available, but I would go for someone that is not necessarily. Obviously, you're not going to get a Trinity Rodman to go to
Hmm.
Palace, so that's not going to happen, or Sophia Smith, but just someone that can score a goal, just someone along the lines of like a Lynn Williams, right? Like just someone in that ilk where they're a veteran presence, someone that understands the game, someone that can get on the end of some great passing. Because like I said, Blanchard is a phenomenal passer. Just watching her with her vision and her play the ball, I think she's great at it. And I just think someone along those lines in that kind of universe would be good for them. But I think this is definitely the time for them specifically. You look at the NWSL for sure. And you look at a player that is kind of in their last year of a contract, maybe looking for an adventure and wouldn't mind helping what I think is going to be a really good organization stay in the WSL. I really believe that. I think if they can stay this year, in 3 to 5 years, you're looking at a team that could be on level with a Liverpool and a Tottenham, which may not sound like a lot given how we talk about them this season, but like it is a lot considering Palace are a new team to this league. So
Yeah. Also, like we had said before, Villa did get their first win of the season, which is a massive boost in the table for them. Um,
maybe even a
yeah,
loan. Sorry, that just popped in my head. Like with NWSL heading the season, like a short-term loan is possible, right? Because a loan would
Absolutely.
put you
yeah,
at the end of the season. I think it would be enough to keep you up, right? Because again, that's the goal for Palace, and it
Mhm.
would have that player back in time for the start of their next, right? Am I? No, I mean they would be a couple months late back
they'd
in
be
the
a couple months. Yeah,
NWSL. Yeah, they'd be a couple of months into the season, but it wouldn't be too bad. I think it's also a possibility.
Yeah.
that's a good point. I guess now, like Crystal Palace's kind of main goal this season is to stay
Mm-hmm.
up, right? They should be doing anything just to stay up, and then next season, if they do that, they will
Right.
probably be able to attract more players
Well,
or build like a squad. I feel like they should kind of start to build around Blanchard, build
mm-hmm,
around
mm-hmm.
um yeah, maybe Mikado and see and yeah, I feel like that's a loan might be a good way to do that. To
Yeah.
bring someone in
I
short
just realized
term
that.
just to like finish, yeah, kind of finish out the season and just literally
Stay
just
up. I
stay
mean,
up.
survive. Just survive. Because I
Yeah.
think in the summer they can, like I said, that's a fun young club that looks to be backed by owners and people running it that want to invest in it. And so I think if they can just stay up, get to the summer, they can, like I said, they can be a team that you look at in a couple years and be like, oh shit.
Yeah. Good shot.
Yep.
Okay. Next up, we had the Merseyside Derby. And this one was honestly probably the upset of the weekend. Controversial, though. Everton won 1-0 against Liverpool. It was their last match for the women at Goodison Park. It was Everton's first win of the season. So, all around, good weekend for them. But they won on a penalty that was given, but it probably shouldn't have been because if you watch it
Dubious,
back,
dubious, dubious,
it
dubious,
was
dubious,
extremely
dubious,
dubious on where the foul took place. And if you look at it, it looked like it was well outside the box and should not have been a penalty after all. But unfortunately, there is no VAR, so the call could not have been reversed by looking at VAR. And yeah, that's all it came down to was just that penalty that was not really a penalty. Everton did what they had to do. They got it, they converted it, and they ended up getting the 3 points off of it.
Not a
Yeah.
pen. No era penalty. No era penalty.
Ne-
No era. Nope. Not a pen.
yeah, never a penalty. I mean, like Matt Beard, he was so frustrated. He was openly wondering if refs hate him. Like he's clearly feeling the heat. I sort of sympathize.
Sort of.
But yeah, it's so I didn't know this actually until watching back the highlights that Liverpool haven't beaten Everton in the league since 2019, which is which I mean, to be fair, like Everton, I forget which season it was, but fairly recently were as high as third, right? And so we kind of talked about Everton last week. You know, they've had a drop off, but yeah, it's it looks like, I mean, it looks like Everton went about winning this the way you would expect them to, right? Like not really having too much of the ball. I think they had like decent spells, but generally speaking, Liverpool had more of the run of play, and you know, by the end, Everton were just hanging on for that win that they needed so badly. But at the same time, I mean, you know, last week, Everton, I thought in the second half versus, was it Crystal Palace that they played last week?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That second half, I thought that was one of their best half, probably the best half of the season they played to that point. And so it just kind of feels like it's moving in the right direction for them. Obviously, like the penalty was the big decisive moment, but you know, it didn't seem like Liverpool did that much. Actually, there was a moment where it looked like Everton almost scored off of Liverpool trying to play out the back, which is kind of how they allowed it once again, right? Haven't learned their lesson. So, you know, it's one of those things, like, even though the penalty is unlucky, I wouldn't go as far as to say Everton didn't deserve this win. But yeah, I mean, it puts them on one win, you know, with the other 4 relegation candidates who also sit on one win. So it's a big moment for them. It could be, maybe we look back on this and look at that as a moment where they end up surviving the league, or surviving and staying up.
I don't know if I would say Liverpool didn't do anything, because like just looking at, I mean, you look at the stats, right? Liverpool had more shots with 17. They had 6 shots on target. They had 65% of possession. They had almost twice as many passes with a far better pass accuracy percentage. And yet, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously numbers can lie, right? Like you can have all those numbers and still be dominated in a match. But I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess what I'm saying is I feel like Liverpool this season have had a lot of these matches where they look like they should have at least come away with points, or at least come away with like convincing wins, and they're coming away with losses, and they're fighting for results. And I just feel like something is not computing there. You know what I mean? It's a bit of like, are my eyes deceiving me kind of thing. Like, I know this team looks and feels like they should be much better, but they absolutely are playing horrendously right now.
Yeah.
Horrendously.
Yeah. This game, yeah, I mean, honestly, even if you remove the like ref's mistake, you can't, it's not an excuse for how Liverpool has been playing.
Right, because that's, like I said, 17 shots, 6 on target. That penalty was upsetting, and that wasn't a penalty in my opinion, but that's one goal. Could have easily had 2 or 3.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I would say the same thing about Arsenal. Like, there's some matches where it's just like, yeah, that's an unfortunate call, but that shouldn't have mattered because you should have beaten the brakes off them.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I agree. Yeah.
You know, I know it's a rivalry match, but man, 2019 not beating Everton, and just kind of to your point, Marc, the last 10 years, Everton tend to finish around 5th or 6th. There's a few years where they finished at the bottom of the table, but they tend to hover around that 5th and 6th mark. So historically, they are a better team than they've showed this year, but still, Liverpool, I mean, it just speaks to how disappointing they've been this season, I feel like, this loss.
Yeah. And like we talked about last week, like Everton has had so much go against them this season that it's almost amazing that they've been able to like stay in the relegation battle this long and like climb out of the spot. So I'm almost rooting for them to like, they
deserve a little home. Yeah, they deserve a little.
I'm so indifferent towards them, but like considering how much
A little
has gone
dark
against them,
arts, a
they're
little
like
dark arts for Everton. Never
just a
heard
little
of
bit,
it.
you know.
Well, it's hurting
But I
Palace,
want
to
to
be fair.
I want to shout out our other co-host Tom. He on the Blue Skies skeeted Abigail Byrne, the ref for this match, equals Danielle Chesky. If you know, you know.
You know.
And for those who
Lisa.
don't know, just look up who Danielle Chesky is and which
Just,
games she has refed.
And you'll
And
find
that's
out real
all.
quick.
Find out real quick. Yeah. Okay. Final match of the weekend was Leicester versus Man United. Man United remains undefeated. They came out with a 2-0 win. This match they played without Ella Toon. I think she was the biggest name missing from this game. But yeah, they were still able to come out with the win. Turlin scored right before the half in like the 3rd minute of stoppage time in the first half. And then Bizet Ildesoy scored in the 81st minute as well for the 2-0.
Yeah, Turlin scored her first goal in a month, basically since the brace versus Tottenham in mid-October. And yeah, you mentioned Bizet scored. I think it was a misplayed back pass that led to that goal. But yeah, I mean, United generally had the run of play in this. I don't think there was too much jeopardy other than them not finishing this match off sooner. But it's a win that they badly needed, I think, especially after not just that result versus Villa, but that performance at home, especially in the first half. And then not only that, for Marc Skinner to come out and say the things he said, about this being a new team and whatever, or how he had to move players around it, for his spine or whatever. Ain't nobody trying to hear that. And who's really not trying to hear that are United fans, right? Like they're already, like, United have not lost a match in the league yet. I guess haven't lost a match overall, but already the Skinner out is brigade is hotting up. So it's but it, like I said, badly needed these 3 points. JC,
It's funny. Sorry, I was gonna say it's just funny how we thought that, United drew the last 3 of their matches, and we considered that a bit of a slide for them. They're still undefeated. It's like it's fine.
That shocked
We're only
me. Looking at
anxious.
the table, that
Yeah.
shocked me. They're still unbeaten. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I go back and forth about United, right? Because like that is a fair point, right? But then I don't know. I look at this goals tally: 11 goals in 7 matches. I'm not, it doesn't move me. Let's put it that way, right? It just like, okay, we've talked about like the 3rd place, right? The race for 3rd. To me, as of right now, I think Arsenal are the favorites for 3rd. I expect them to finish 3rd at this point. But it's also partly because of what we've seen the last few weeks with Arsenal and Man U. And I feel it's one of those things where even when they were playing well, it's like, okay, but we know how this has gone in the past. This is Marc Skinner's 4th season now, right? Like most WSL managers don't get this kind of tenure. Casey Stoney wasn't at the club as long as Marc Skinner is at Man U. So that's where like my benefit of the doubt stops.
Yeah. I think part of Man United's success also, like you're saying, they haven't scored that many, but they definitely haven't conceded. And obviously it goes both ways, right? You have to score to win, but you can't let in goals. And their backline's been pretty decent. But I think Fallon Tillis-Joyce has been incredible all season.
Big reason why they haven't conceded.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how many saves she has made yet, but she's definitely in contention for like a Golden Glove of right now.
I believe she and yes, so Fallon and Hannah Hampton of Chelsea are tied with 5 clean sheets apiece. Fallon leads the league in save percentage at 91%. Hannah Hampton's the next at 85%. Yeah, 91% is a crazy 91. Number.
That's crazy.
Yeah, actually, and we'll get into call-ups later in the episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say it, but I was like, I felt like it was too early for the segue. I was gonna say enough saves to get that call up.
Right, exactly. Literally, I mean, like Emma Hayes herself said, she's the lead at shot stopping. So, you can definitely, when you see those numbers, and I think the back line for Man U in general has been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
They've been tough to score on. You know, they deserve credit for that. That's why big part of the reason why they haven't lost a match yet. But maybe that's something they can build on.
Yeah. Let's get into the call-ups. That was a good segue.
So, I just want to say though, I just want to say one last point on United. I do low key feel bad that like we have talked so much about their slide, and I feel like they picked the worst weekend to get like a convincing 2-0 win because the soccer this weekend was so incredible and the matches were just so insane, and it was just kind of like United, whatever.
This one just felt like
that's so unfortunate. It just kind of just felt like man, and it's just so unfortunate. Like, sorry, United fans, sorry, but at the same time, out of all the matches, it was kind of like man, in terms of like the story and the weight and like. But I'm sorry. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
You're so right. I agree. I totally agree. There's an international break coming up. And so some of the rosters were announced in the last couple days. Big match at Wembley Stadium come out on November 30th, US versus England. And like we just said, so there are a couple, actually, well, maybe if we want to go through some of the players on both those teams, but the people in the WSL who play, who have been called up for the US by Emma Hayes are Emily Fox for Arsenal, and Fallon Tools-Joyce for Man United. This is her first senior call-up. I'm not sure if she was called up in the youth teams, but definitely first like senior call-up, and well deserved. I think all of us who have watched her since like Ligue 1 or the D1 Arkema and WSL have like known how good she was, and now that she's gone and done it at a club like United as well, finally she's getting the recognition and the chance to play for the national team. Otherwise I know this is a WSL podcast, so we should stick to those players, but I think honestly she was one of the most exciting call-ups for me anyway for the US from this roster.
In sort of US related, I guess you could call it news or updates. Kat Macario and Mia Official were invited to Thanksgiving dinner. So the US will be in England for Thanksgiving when it's that same week as the big match. But so they weren't called up to the squad, which I mean for Mia Official, she's still recovering from the ACL injury. For Kat, it's been an interesting season. I think she's still working her way back. I don't think she's fit enough to start matches yet. I think the most she's played is like 30, 35 minutes. So, at least like with Chelsea playing the way they are, there's no need to rush her back. But at the same time, it's curious to see how and when she'll reintegrate her way into the squad. But yeah, in terms of WSL players, I don't think, or at least for the US squad, I don't think there was anybody else.
Yeah, I think it's just her and Fox.
Did they drop the England squad? Because
I'm
sure that has all the WSL players on it.
They
sure
did.
I guess I might as well read them out just because there are so many. For the goalkeepers, we have Chelsea's goalkeeper Hannah Hampton. I'll just read out the WSL ones. Defenders from Chelsea, Millie Bright and Lucy Bronze are both called up. Alex Greenwood from City. From United, they have Gabby George, Maya Letitia, and Millie Turner. So
talk most about that back line.
Yeah, like we were saying. Right. And then Leah Williamson from Arsenal. Mm-hmm. And then in the midfielders, Grace Clinton from Man United, Fran Kirby from Brighton, Jess Park from Manchester City, and then two players who've got their first senior call-up. Ruby Mace from Leicester City, previously Man City. She's been called up, I know, to the youth squads a few times, but this is her first senior call-up. And Laura Blinkild-Brown, also on Manchester City. And then forwards are all WSL players. Chloe Kelly, Beth Mead, Jess Naz, which is a fun one from Tottenham, Alessia Russo, and Aggie Beaver-Jones, Chelsea.
All the big clubs represented in that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Arsenal, City, Chelsea, and Tottenham. Well, maybe not Tottenham, but you know.
They're close enough. A shout out to Ruby Mace. Became the first Leicester player to ever get called up to Lioness squad.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know we talked about Chloe Kelly already, but I think obviously she's like a great player. She's been a stalwart for the Lionesses for a while, so there's no reason to drop her. But I think it is still interesting that they, Serena Wiegman kind of still not relies on her, but trusts her enough, even if she's not getting as many minutes as she typically is used to, still able to be called up for one of those forward positions.
And on that note about Chloe Kelly, just reading a quote from Wiegman, she said her playing time is a concern right now, but also look at what players we have available. We have some injuries up front, Lauren Hemp, Lauren James, right? And so it's just, it is kind of that. I think there's a little hint of like, if things were different, maybe she doesn't. Was that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, I'm saying she's basically saying she needs to leave City. Like she needs to leave.
Or her situation needs to change.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I'll say this. I think her situation will change as long as Hemp is hurt. But I think the moment Hemp is healthy, like that's City. Like I feel like City made it clear that is their right wing. Like that is their player on the right. Period. Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And we might not even see Chloe Kelly because I think there's also the young player that they use at that spot ahead of her sometimes. I'm like blanking on her name. See, this is why we need Tom here. Tom would know. But like
Fugino?
Maybe. I think it is Fugino. It
might be Fugino.
I think they use her in that position or have used her at times in that position. So I think even she is like knocking on the door of overcoming Kelly, and depending on how Gareth Taylor feels, like this could very much they play on the left. Okay, they play on the left. Okay, well, there you go. we have Crunk behind the scenes who's also a City fan who will help us out with the clubs that we know nothing about. But yeah, I mean, we'll see if we see Kelly. We'll see.
Yeah.
She definitely needs minutes.
Anyone that you thought was like surprising to see called up, or anyone you were surprised to see left off?
I
don't think, at least as far as I know, I wasn't able to find a lot of rosters. I'm not sure if like how many of the teams have dropped them because it's still 10 days away. The first, at least that match, and there's a couple matches later, but a lot of the matches are for the at least UEFA are the Nations League qualifiers, I think, and so I'm not even sure if every federation has like matches scheduled during this break.
Oh yeah, because this international break is probably going to be the last round of the Euro qualifiers.
I think so, right?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, because this should be the last international break before the year ends. So, like your Norways, your Swedens, your Scotland's, right? They're all going to be involved in that playoff. So, definitely going to see a lot more WSL players in action. I think as the rosters drop, we'll know who for sure. But
yeah, exactly.
I feel like Leia still like being there surprises me, just given the narrative around her has been questionable at best this season. And I think, maybe it's just a testament of her kind of like Marc talked about with Chloe Kelly, just the trust that Wiegman has in her. But I'm kind of surprised to see her not be sat out a window. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I am surprised, but I'm not surprised, right? Like I am, but I'm not. But I feel like if there was a window to sit her out, it would have been this one. But I also understand if you're going for your last round of Euro qualifiers, you probably don't want to rock the boat too much with your roster.
Well, I think England has already qualified, right?
Yeah, England.
So they're not going to
Then I am
be in the
surprised that she's
playoffs.
there. Then I'm surprised she's there.
That's fair.
Especially when you're
wonder
going
if
into a
she's-
match with the US that you know they're rotating. Like just from a US perspective,
Yeah.
the US women's team is bringing probably what we would consider their C team.
Well, there's no
B
triple.
team. Well,
espresso.
I'll just say they're bringing the youth. They're bringing the kids. A lot
Yeah.
of youth, a lot of first timers. So this is an experience-driven US women's team, and I just feel like knowing that was coming on the England side, I feel like maybe with the narrative around Leah Williamson, maybe she would have been left off. But we shall
Yeah.
see.
I
Maybe
wonder
the
if
improved
it's
Arsenal form kept her on.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it's a confidence thing too. Like, would leaving her off ruin that confidence? She scored finally. Not that she's like a prolific scorer, obviously. She like is a center back, but that one goal seemed to have sparked something and just like built that confidence up after obviously her injury and ACL recovery. So I wonder if maybe this is also like a mental thing. Like you can't leave her off because that would like ruin her confidence that she's building at the moment. But we'll see how she plays. Yeah, any last thoughts on rosters?
No, it should be interesting. I'm interested to see. I mean, obviously, everyone is interested about that big match, the U.S. England.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested in. Just again, from a U.S. perspective, just to see how some of the first timers get on against what looks like a very strong England side.
Yeah,
because you know they're gonna. I mean, friendly or not, you know that match is gonna have intensity. There isn't like they can call it a friendly. It's not a friendly. Like these are the kind of matches that come with a little bit extra.
Considering the circumstances at which they played last time in Wembley, when it was right after the big scandal and the story came out about the abuse in the NWSL, obviously the players were not fully mentally there, nor like should they have been expected to be. And so this time around, they'll be there.
Focused.
Everyone's focused.
They're gonna have
ready
Lily there.
Sip some tea and throw it into the harbor.
Oh my god. You have a bunch of Gen Zers coming in who absolutely give no fucks. And get ready, England. I'm telling you right now.
I was when they score, not if they score. When they score, I'm looking forward to the celebrations already.
Well, that's what I say. The UK, again, I know this is like a WSL podcast. We're probably angering a lot of people, but like England better be happy that the triple espresso is not there, because you talk about players that absolutely would love to rub it in your face when they score. Those are probably three of the top ones in the US pool of talent: Rodman, Smith, and Swanson. So
I was just about to call her Pew.
That's why I paused. That's what the long pause was. I was like, it is Swanson, right? Okay, yeah.
Swanson.
I'm so used to calling her Pew, 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 Pew.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Oh, it'll be fun. I wish I could go, but I will be at home actually. We'll be swapping places. Okay. Exciting news. Fun news. Somewhat soccer related, but also not. Sam Kerr and Christy Muse are having a baby. And that's like okay. If again, in the NWSL, a lot of times they have used knee injury in place of a player being pregnant. And so now when it comes to like suspecting players of like going through pregnancy before they actually announce it, knee injury is often, I feel like they use that for like Crystal Dunn, Alex Morgan, I think, but maybe another one, I'm not sure. But because West Ham called Muse's injury a calf injury, which it probably was, I had no suspicions. If they had said knee injury, I may have suspected something.
Really?
Because maybe. I mean, but it would have been a joke at least. Somebody been like, "Oh, knee injury, maybe."
That's
But
true.
because
It would have been. It would have been.
yeah,
Somebody would have joked about it.
somebody would have
100%.
joked about it and then said it. But yeah,
I
that was
still
kind
feel
of,
like this
I
is a
think,
surprise, though.
a surprise to everyone.
Yeah.
Welcome surprise, happy surprise, sportsmanship, baby. Yeah,
I wonder how
it's
Stacey's
just.
doing. If you know, you know. That
Shout
is
out
like deep
Stacey.
NWSL lore, isn't it?
Someone said that they should actually name their child after Stacey.
Stacey.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would
Lesbian
be
Stacey. They are.
that would be
They
incredible.
are. But I know people are already talking about. The question is, which country will this child play for?
Oh
That
God, so
is
many
a.
options.
The U.S. just got done with the hype that was Lily Johannes and the Dutch kind of fight. It's
Exactly.
gonna be
This is the next
nothing.
one.
This is gonna be the next. Like that child, Mewis Kerr is going to be highly sought after. And you're right. It's gonna be Australia or it's gonna be the U.S.
Yeah.
Or well, and
I
if
don't
that kid's
know.
born in England,
That's what I was gonna say. I don't know if the UK has like the
Oh, we're
birthright
gonna have a
thing or if they
three-way
have to have
fight.
to live here for like a specific number of years. I actually wanted
Three-way
to look into
fight.
that, but could be a three-way fight. It could be a three-way fight. The most chaotic possibility would them be choosing England. But anyway, that's
It
like
would be.
at
I feel like
least 16
yeah, I don't
years
know.
down the line.
I'm trying to think like on the men's side because Saka, I don't know if Saka was born in England.
question.
Huh?
Who you said Saka?
Saka, yeah. Baki Saka. I'm trying to think on the men's side because I would assume that they have the same rules for men and women in the
Yeah.
England national team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like that's a safe presumption. And I know the
Yeah.
men's side tend to have the players that are like capable of representing other other nations. So I just am
Yeah,
not
for sure.
sure if Saka. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if Saka was born in England or not.
But either
Y'all can
way,
continue.
I just know Sam Mewis is gonna be in her auntie era. Is gonna be the best auntie, and
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's true.
it's so funny. I could be so excited for people I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on a serious note, though, their post, so it was like a joint post between Sam Kerr and Chrissy Mewis, did end up getting tons of like homophobic comments underneath it. And so much so that Sonia Bonpastor and Chelsea as a whole put out statements of like how it's not okay. And whatever Bonpastor said, I just want to support Sam. I fully support her. This is just unacceptable to have these kinds of comments, especially in 2024. It's just crazy for me to understand how people can react like this, etc. And then Chelsea also issued a statement. There's no place in society for any form of discrimination, and we will not accept any abuse directed towards our players, staff, or supporters. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't actually know what more to say about this. Like, I'm not surprised that it's happened, but it's just
Yeah, I was about to say, not surprising,
yeah.
just people showing their ass. I mean, that's good. I guess, expose them for who they are.
Expose them, yeah.
I will say and this is not me trying to point fingers in any way, right? Like I think these isms and homophobia and all that, I think that exists pretty much everywhere, right? But it's always jarring to me just how like intense the homophobia is, like especially in like online European soccer spaces. Like there's just something about it. It's just so unhinged and like because like every year the Premier League teams do the Rainbow Laces campaign, right? And they always have to close the comments. Always. Like they're the same fans who are, always commenting on their clubs accounts, Twitter and Instagram or whatnot, are then hurling abuse at them. And it's just like the most ignorant, most depraved comments. And then this particular story, with Christy and Sam announcing their pregnancy, like anybody who talked about it had to close their comments. I think Emma Sanders eventually had to close her replies. The various posts who cover the women's game, they eventually had to close their replies. Like it's crazy that, like you said, it's just crazy that people act like this.
I mean, they're hiding behind a screen, and that's why they feel the bravado to do that. But it's
anonymity is a hell of a drug.
Honestly,
it's just such a hyper masculine, space that it's just some of the stuff you see from it. Like I said, it's just jarring. It's like, wow.
Well, I feel like this is also again, not to diminish it or poo-poo. This is what we talked about with the whole Jonas situation, where people were saying oh, are Arsenal fans being too toxic because they wrote Jonas out on a wall? How about we fix the toxicity that comes with being supremely homophobic first?
Yeah.
And then you know what I mean? Because I feel like that's more of a pressing issue than fans expressing their displeasure with management. Let's focus on the real issues that are plaguing this league, right? But also, I think it's also important to point out, anytime you're talking about Twitter or anything online, especially, it comes with a unfortunate large amount of trolls that just love to talk that way just to do it, to cause problems and to be controversial and edgy. So I don't want to paint a broad brush to say this is how a lot of WSL fans feel. When it looked like on the surface, a lot of those comments were coming from your typical kind of, player profile pick people.
Yeah. I won't say the name, but there's a United.
No, person. There's a lot of them, but we know, we ain't.
It's so disheartening to me that that's just an easy way for those people to farm engagement.
That's all it is.
It's just so sickening that it works. It just it is.
Yeah.
But on a happier note, Woso baby, let's go.
Woso baby.
Another Woso baby.
And that actually, I saw an article because I was also curious about in England, and especially the WSL, what the maternity leave policy is. And because I know it's been a big talk in the NWSL now that there are several more mothers in the league and it's part of the CBA. The WSL maternity leave was updated in 2022 when the Football Association and the Professional Footballers Association, the PFA, agreed on new regulations. This includes both players and coaches can follow these, and so both are entitled to 14 weeks maternity leave fully paid with statutory pay in place after that point. And initially, in previous policies, only players who had been at a club for at least 26 weeks, so what is that, about 6.5 months, would be granted maternity leave, but now it's not conditional on how long they've been at the club. Any of the players in the WSL are entitled to that. And there's also leave for, they've put in place for same-sex couples too. So mothers who do not carry the child in same-sex relationships are entitled to 8 weeks paid absence, but they must take it in the first 6 months after the birth of the child. So
please take that. It's please take that. Enjoy your time off. Enjoy 8 weeks.
I might actually agree with you, by the way, but
for several reasons, take that time off.
Stop terrorizing people. You can just take that time off. Go be a mother.
But yeah, so Christy's contract runs out in June, so basically at the end of this season, and there's no automatic contract renewal. Not sure if she would even want to do that.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, there is a proposition in place where clubs cannot cancel a contract now based on pregnancy. So if let's say the contract was still running through the entirety of the pregnancy, they can't cancel at any point. However, since her contract will expire by the time she has a child, then that's fine. They don't need to renew. But that's good. Yeah, I was pleased that these changes had been made, and it seems decent. I mean, I don't know honestly what would be like the best amount of maternity leave. I know some countries in Europe have like a year or something crazy, like Sweden and Norway, I think, are like that. I say crazy just because we're from the
Yeah,
States,
we come in
where it's like
in America. We have like
yeah.
2 days, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Where it shouldn't
Well,
be
I don't
crazy,
even think
but
they
it
have
is.
maternity leave in most places, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, some places, yeah, it's not even mandated, but 14 weeks, decent amount. Could be more, but it's something. Um, yeah. And then last thing before we preview next week, I just wanted to run through, like we had said, the matches last week were all played at the main stadiums for all the WSL and the Women's Championship games. I have the attendance numbers for the WSL games. So just to give you an idea of what it was like, like I had said, the Tottenham versus Arsenal match had 28,852 fans, which I think was the highest of the weekend. Next was Chelsea versus City at Stamford Bridge, 19,499. Could have been one more just to get that 500. But that is something a bit surprising to me is that even last season when they played at Stamford Bridge, it seemed like Chelsea had kind of difficulty at least like selling out the lower bowl part of it or
Yeah.
just selling tickets in general to the main stadium.
Yeah.
Whereas I think for their like at Kings Meadow, it's always pretty jam-packed. Obviously, it's a lot smaller, but they don't really have much trouble there. So I don't know where the disconnect is in that. Then Merseyside Derby at Goodison Park saw 9,823 people, followed by at Old Trafford, Man United. Sorry, not at Old Trafford, at Leicester. It's at King Power Stadium, 5,405 people. Amex Stadium in Brighton, they saw 4,638 fans, and at Villa Park, there were 2,673. So after like the top like 4 teams, top 3 teams fans, there is quite a bit of a drop off, but still like in the thousands, whereas honestly probably a few seasons ago they were like in the hundreds at some of these matches. So you can see the growth, but there is still plenty of improvement to be made.
Plenty of room to grow, but
yeah,
we've come a long way.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's also I like the Tottenham game had 28,800 whatever, right? They said that's 46% of the stadium's capacity. And now I'm like even more curious of how many of those were Arsenal fans, or at least what percentage, because when Arsenal play at home, they're regularly topping like 40,000.
Yeah.
So
and that's
definitely,
from what I understand, that's them not even opening the Emirates all the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when they
there
play
have
at the
been a
Emirates,
couple
they don't
like
have the
60,000.
full 60,000. Yeah, like they don't have that full ability all the time. I don't think.
Yeah. So.
That's massive.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Okay. Let's get into a quick preview of what's coming up this weekend. Actually, this week first. This is Tuesday night. On Wednesday and Thursday this week, we have Champions League match day 4 is the reverse fixtures of match day 3. So we have Chelsea at home versus Celtic, Arsenal at home versus Juve, and Man City away at Hammarby. I don't know if we have much to preview for these, but basically, I think we're all expecting what happened in the reverse fixture.
Same.
Yeah, similar results, similar things. Hopefully, continue winning and
maybe
scoring.
Not 4 or 5-0 for Arsenal, but should be two goals. A nice 2-0, maybe 3-1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just get another 3 points.
But I expect the big clubs to get 3 points, yeah.
I will say, like, so this is kind of the old Champions League format. Starting next season, the women's game is going to move towards what the men's game is doing this season with the league, the big league table. And like kind of juxtaposing it against one another, I kind of think I prefer the big league table. Like this feels slightly monotonous. You know what I mean? Like especially with the whole thing of the fixtures mirroring each other, right? So like in our team's respective groups, like the two big teams play on the first and last match day, right? And so it's like those are the two decisive fixtures, and then everything between that, you kind of know what to expect, right? So it just feels like we're kind of slowly marching towards that.
Yeah, good point. I didn't think of it like that, but to be fair, I haven't been able to follow the men's side that much in the new format.
It's been a lot of fun. The new format's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have an opinion on it yet, but I don't see why I wouldn't like it. I think it's fun that you play several different teams, and it's
it definitely feels good getting the big clubs into the next round without any of the finishing third and being left out type of drama. Just because, at least it's obviously going to be different on the women's side just because of the number of teams, but like on the men's side, like they're allowing 22 of the teams automatically get into the next round, or like the first 8 automatically get in, and then the up to the 22nd team after that are in playoffs. So
yeah, exactly.
And there's only like 32 teams in there. So yeah,
right.
I mean, pretty much everyone at least is going to get the playoffs unless you're absolutely terrible.
Right. But then at the same time, like seeding matters as well.
Well,
so like
you want to be in the top 8 for sure. You want to be in that top 8 to avoid the playoffs because that's gonna suck.
Right.
Having to play all those matches, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see that on the women's side.
I agree.
It'll make the season a lot more interesting in the sense of like how do teams balance? Because like if you're gonna have a playoff, if you're Arsenal or Tottenham and you're in this kind of like Champions League playoff system, having to balance the league and extra Champions League matches seems rough, but we'll see.
Yeah. Then, if you remember, we've been saying Chelsea and United have a game in hand from match day 3 when there was a scheduling snafu and they had to postpone that game. That is being made up this weekend. I believe on Sunday, right? Or is it Saturday? But one of those days. Sunday
noon kickoff.
Okay. Sunday noon kickoff. Chelsea versus Man United. They'll be back on level terms with the rest of the league, so at least we'll see properly where each team is, and potentially one of these teams will not be unbeaten anymore.
That's right. The last 2 unbeaten teams. That's what we mentioned in our little poem.
Or it ends in a draw.
Exactly. And they remain. And then finally, we have the second match of or match day 2 of the Women's League Cup, formerly known as the Conti Cup. This one, because United is playing that makeup game over the weekend, they are playing Wednesday against Everton in their second match. And then there's also going to be Spurs versus Aston Villa, Brighton versus Leicester, the London City Lionesses versus West Ham, and Bristol City versus Birmingham City, who are currently sitting 3rd and 1st, respectively, in the Women's Championship. So those are some of the notable fixtures for the League Cup.
Yep, and with it only being 3 games for each team in the League Cup group stage, this is a pretty pivotal week, I think, for those who want to. Well, everybody wants to advance, but especially like if you're not in Champions League, especially if you're like a Man U, a Tottenham, a Liverpool, like I feel like you should be looking at this as an opportunity.
This is your trophy, yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's like it'll be fun to see, like especially the London City versus West Ham, where like London City is currently 4th in the table in the championship, and we said West Ham is like towards the bottom. I don't remember exactly which where they placed right now, but I think 10th or 11th. Is that what they're now?
I think they're 11th.
Yeah, West Ham are 11th.
11th, yeah. So they're really like, I guess in numbers, not super far off. So it'll be interesting to see how a top championship side plays against one of the lower WSL sides. Especially with how Kang is trying to build the London City Lionesses. Okay, any last thoughts?
I thought, well, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but I thought this was another strong weekend for Japanese internationals in the WSL.
Very much so. Yeah, I almost want to do a full like roundup an episode on just the Japanese internationals at one point.
Yeah,
because the more we watch and the more we
If
see,
they
that,
keep
like,
it up, we
they're-
might. Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
At least
Maybe
a
during
full
winter
segment,
break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay
All
tuned.
right. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. This episode, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit that follow button to stay up to date when new episodes drop. Leave a rating and review if you can. We would love to hear your feedback. There are 12 teams, 6 matches, 4 hosts. You're listening to the 12. Have fun this weekend, and we'll see you next week.